Today's story is titled, I Accidentally Put My Affair's Underwear in the Wash and My Husband Caught Me and Filed for a Divorce. Let's get to reading. I messed up. I messed up big time, Redditors. I was having an affair outside my marriage and I slipped up. I slipped up and my husband caught me and filed to divorce me. I didn't want to lose my marriage. Growing up, I never believed in divorce. My parents hadn't believed it and had stayed together even though my father was bringing home different side pieces every day, so I saw no problem with incorporating it into my marriage. I didn't know it would backfire. Obviously, I never told my husband from the get-go that I was considering taking on a lover. He would have thrown me out of the house as the man of the house, so I did it sneakily behind his back. I wonder why it is not frowned upon when a man brings in a mistress to the house, but when a woman takes up a lover in her marriage, talks of how immoral she is bound to break out. Why was it always like that? Anyway, I had never believed I would lose my husband because of one slip up. It was perfect. I had the perfect arrangement. I had the perfect marriage. I'm sure your big question was, if I had the perfect marriage, why did I go on to have an arrangement outside of the marriage? I guess I had grown up with my father's mentality. LOL. I'm just kidding. Why was I having an affair? I had no idea either. I just saw this handsome, sexy man, and I just couldn't resist. Nope, that was not what had happened. Let me start my story from the beginning and tell you how I had gotten entangled in an affair and how my husband caught me. Hello, Redditors. My name is Tracy, and I'm turning 30 years old by the year's end. My husband's name is Frank, not his real name in case he somehow wounds up reading this, and he's 35 years old. I met my husband about 6 years ago when I was on vacation in Bora Bora. He had come to relax from the work pressures and we had hit it off. Well, I had just come out of a pretty bad breakup, so I wanted to run away. He ticked every box in my man list. Handsome, tall, and he was in Bora Bora, so it looked like he had money. I liked him more as our vacation came to an end and we had to go our separate ways. A month later, I got a job offer and moved to New York where my husband was, and we found ourselves together again. We started dating after I moved, and we dated for about 6 months. He proposed to me on our 6th-month anniversary, and I had said, why not? I had been married to my husband for 4 years. In those 4 years, I got to know his likes and dislikes, his family and friends, his job, a real estate agent, his irks, and what he did that irked me. And I also got to learn I couldn't have children during those 4 years. This was one of the major quarrels. In fact, let me continue with telling everything in order. So we got married, and we were a happy couple living and prospering in NY. I stayed at home because I didn't have a head for business, but I loved to bake, and at the beginning of our marriage, my husband had no qualms with me not having a job. He was happy to be providing. I didn't know that it would take a turn. First year of marriage to my husband was like a honeymoon that lasted for a whole year. By the second year, my husband's true colors started to show. It started with his family and how I wasn't treating them like I'm supposed to. Can you imagine this man wanted me to be going to his family home to be helping his mother because she had just suffered from stroke? So I should have turned into her caregiver because I didn't have a job of my own? He had become angry when I had told him I wasn't going to do it, and then began questioning me as to why I didn't have a job. Who in the world did that? I was married to him. Wasn't it his job to provide for me? This was when it dawned on me in my marriage that my honeymoon was over. Do you guys want to know what my husband did next? He got me a job. He got me a job in the bakery a street down our place because he thought it would perfectly suit me as I love to bake and all. I was perfectly fine being a stay-at-home wife, and he had to mess that up just because I refused to go and take care of his mother. I tried my best and took the job, but apparently the only place I baked perfectly was at home and not under the supervision of someone glaring daggers into my croissant from my back. I quit, but of course I didn't tell my husband that. I went to work in a bakery throughout my 3rd year of marriage in my husband's eyes, but in reality I was just going to crash in a friend's place. But then, after pulling the scam for a year plus, I got tired and my friend was also tired of me. But she didn't tell me, of course. I just saw it on her face and knew she was tired of me. So I had to either tell my husband I quit or find somewhere else to be going because I was sure as heck not going to work. And I tried. You guys ought to believe. I tried telling him that I had quit my job, but then he had come back home on the night I'd planned to tell him and said how proud he was of me and how now that I was earning, he could focus his money on something else and expanding his agency. He was going to stop giving me my usual allowance. There was no way I was going to tell him that I didn't have a job and I had been surviving on his allowance the past year. He would have become livid, so I didn't tell him. I foolishly decided to continue with my ruse. Then things changed up for me. I was at the supermarket on a fateful day and I bumped into a slightly older man. If I was like 28, he would be about 50. And I say bumped not in all those high school fairy tale she**T stories. I was rolling down my cart on the slope to go unload my cart in my car's trunk. And my phone rang and I let go of the cart and it ramped into the stranger. I had been so mortified and couldn't stop apologizing. Well, he had shaken it off. And that began my encounter with my affair. He decided to treat me to coffee after the little accident because I had seemed shaken, even though he was the one I hit. That was when I found out he was older than me, and he looked like someone that could pass for my age. We exchanged numbers and we got talking. Apparently he was one hotshot, I can't disclose his name, that had conglomerates, and one of them so happened to be a bakery. During one of our talks, I had revealed that I loved to bake, but I hadn't seen the revenue to start. He got me a job as the head baker in the bakery, and I was surprised that he hadn't wanted anything in return. After work, he took me out on dates, shopping, to get ice cream. It was like he was courting me from scratch. Of course, he didn't know I was married. I never wore my marriage ring after my husband decided to stop sending money for my upkeep. I still hated him for that. Anyway, my new lover was doing all the things I had to hint at my husband before he did it. And a plus? He never pushed to go sexual. It was like he was comfortable with just being in my presence. We always met in the evenings, and it was always around the bakery, and if it was anywhere out of the vicinity, my lover would don on a face cap and dark sunshades like he was hiding something. That was how I knew he was a hotshot or something. Well, I never pushed because I was also hiding something. I was married, and he could also have been married, but we found comfort in each other while being extremely careful in case any of our friends spotted. I even wore a wig most times, LOL. It was a shitstorm with everything, but I was enjoying our friendship and I didn't want it to end by one of my friends, or my husband's friends, butting in and saying I was a married woman. That's true, that almost happened one time. We, my lover and I, were seated at a bodega store, and one of the store ladies had been my husband's friend's wife. And I had stupidly taken off my sunglasses when we had entered her shop. And the woman stared at me through the whole time we had been there. Of course she had tried to approach me, but luckily I had contacts on, and when she tried to talk to me, I had been like no English. That had been hilarious because I was scared that I was caught. I mean, the woman was someone, one of the someones actually, that you would see in my house when my husband would host a barbecue. I thought she was going to call me out. But she let me be, and through the whole time in the store I didn't speak and let my lover do the shopping. Bonus point to my lover because he didn't ask me what was that back there in the store. I had held my breath until we had been far from there. I had also held my breath for the next week or two, thinking she had snitched to her husband, who had then snitched to mine. But then, after 2 weeks, nothing happened. My husband seemed as aloof as ever. That had been a scare, so from then on, I had become over-careful about the times when I had been with my lover. Like I said, we never took our relationship to the sexual level, or at least I never wanted to. But then, I was pushed into taking my relationship sexual with my lover with my husband. It was his fault everything went south too. If he had been the husband he was supposed to be, nothing would have taken this turn. My husband came home from work and announced that his agency had temporarily appointed a female as his supervisor to see if he was competent enough for a promotion. I had no problem with that, of course. If that was what his agency saw fit, then who was I to question that? I took it well. I took it well, even when he told me that he was going to be traveling to survey property with this same supervisor. I didn't say anything, but then the wheels in my brain started rolling. I mean, when did real estate agents start taking trips? I hadn't said anything, of course. I had smiled and been happy for my husband because everything was going to end in a promotion. A promotion meant that maybe he was going to start giving me my allowance even though I was working in my lover's bakery. My husband didn't need to know that. You all wouldn't imagine my husband started bringing his supervisor bitch back home to my house. It had started with one dinner. It's just dinner, honey. Wow, her with your cooking. That had been the words of my husband. It was supposed to be just dinner. I mean, the fact that they traveled to hell knows where together for a week in the name of selling property and land. It wasn't enough. She wanted to encroach on my personal property. Heck, I'm just realizing that the witch had seduced my husband right in front of my eyes. Anyway, that first dinner hadn't been just dinner. Nope, it had been the dinner I found out his so-called supervisor was his ex. Yep, you read right. It was his ex-girlfriend that he had been going on work trips with and leaving me for. LOL. Small world, right? I wasn't laughing the day I found out. Not that I was complaining, I had my lover to keep me coming. But can you imagine the audacity my husband had to bring his ex-girlfriend to our home under the guise that she was our supervisor? What if I had introduced my lover to him like that? Oh, how I wish I had done that. I would have loved to see his face when I introduced the both of them. I can guarantee that he wouldn't have been smiling. But I had sat there and smiled as I recounted stories of them in college and whatever not, how they had gone their separate ways after college and how they had found themselves back in NY after that long. My husband's ex described it as a miracle. LMAO, of course it would be a miracle to her. She was finally reconnected with her love. I mean, there was no way you guys would tell me they hadn't also reconnected in bed. It was so obvious. And maybe I was reading things, but I didn't care at the moment. I was just plain angry. I didn't act on my anger, however. That is, until my husband's ex-witch decided to make my house her personal home abode, and my husband began comparing me to her. Talk about how she wanted kids and was ready to have. This was another major fight that led me to sleep with my lover, as I had mentioned earlier. During my second year of marriage, I had discovered that I couldn't have children because I had tied my tubes. I didn't remember until that moment in the hospital. It was when I was 18, and I didn't see any reasons why I should bring children into this world. What if I was going to end up abusing them like my dad did to me? So I had told my husband in our second year of marriage, and of course we had opted to adopt children. He had been cool with it, but then the witch came into his life and everything turned upside down. He started saying how I didn't want to have children because I only thought about myself and didn't think about no one else. That if I truly wanted to have children, I would have my tubes untied. That his ex would want to have children of her own someday. So why didn't I? On both hands, I couldn't count the number of arguments we had because it exceeded. With every new day came a new argument, and his ex was just spoiling everything. I would get home from work and see her in my house with no shoes on, and she would say she had to get something from our house for work. The man had given her a key, so I ran to the man I found comfort with, and after 2 drinks, I followed him home and we slept together. It was a long time coming anyway, and it wasn't as if my husband wasn't sleeping with his supervisor anyway, and my lover gave good S*X that made one forget about their problems. He was very sexually active for someone his age, and I didn't complain one bit. It was more than my husband is in bed anyway. Anytime we had an argument, I would go to my lover and spend the night with him. My husband would think I was at a friend's place and didn't even bother to check if I was safe. This back and forth went on for about 2 months, and after the 2 months elapsed, my husband's ex stopped coming around. It seemed he had gotten the promotion at his office. He had indeed, because he decided to start acting like a husband for once. He apologized and took me out. He said he was sorry, and it had been the pressure of work that had made him lash out. I took the baby girl treatment. Who else would have? He resumed my allowance and showered me with gifts at every turn. I was finally enjoying my marriage, but with an affair on the side. LOL. You all can say what you want. I had no shame then. I have none now as I'm narrating this. Everything was going smoothly for me. I went to see my affair after my shift at the bakery and went back home to my husband at night. It was a double win for me. I was loved by my husband and was receiving good S*X on the side from my lover. Who didn't want to be me? I'm sure you all do. Except when everything came crashing down. My dream shattered to pieces. Apparently, my affair was married, just like I was. He had invited me to his home and I had foolishly gone thinking nothing was going to happen. And then, boom, his wife caught us in bed together. It was the most disgraceful moment of my life. A middle-aged woman flogged me out of bed with her husband and was yelling profanities at me and how I wanted to ruin her marriage. I mean, I should have seen it coming right. My affair was also having an affair with me. The irony, LOL? No wonder he put on all those disguises because he was dodging his wife the same way I was dodging my husband. And his wife was a hellcat. In my hurry to get out of there, I grabbed his underwear and put it in my bag and ran away. I was once again in another scary position thanks to my affair. I ran away and didn't look back. Anyway, I saw it as a sign. The end of my affair meant I could focus on my husband and all the love he was showering on me. It wasn't bad. Just that the S*X would no longer be the same, but in my head I could bear that. I was done with an affair, and my husband never found out, and he wasn't ever going to find out, until I saw the underwear in my bag. How had I forgotten that? What if my husband had seen it poking out of my bag? Then I went and made a more foolish decision. I put it in the wash. I wanted to wash it and send it back to my lover with a note telling him how he was a lying, good-for-nothing. I was a two-timing good-for-nothing, but he didn't need to know that. I had put it in the wash, and my husband had come back from work early on that fateful day, and with the excitement of seeing my husband, I'd forgotten to take out the underwear from the wash. My husband went into the laundry room because he had been looking for an important key that he thought was in one of his slacks and found the underwear in the wash. The next thing I recalled was my husband shouting who had I brought into his house when he wasn't there, and that was when I knew he had found the underwear and I was done for. I didn't know how far he was going to take it, so I had thought about lying that it was his, but my husband wasn't having it. He knew his things, and the underwear wasn't even something he would buy. Talk less of own. You all needed to see the way he had searched every room in the house, and when he hadn't seen anything, he had come to face me. I panicked and started talking off point, and that's when I knew he had me. He asked if I was cheating on him, and I had lied and said it was a one-time thing. Confessing to a crime was usually way better than not confessing to it with my husband because he had a way of getting it out of you. My husband stormed off to work, and when he came back, he didn't say a word to me. A week down, my husband came back home with a file and threw it in front of me and ordered me to sign it. He said he didn't want anything to do with me and I should sign it before he carried out revenge on me. But stupid and foolish me, I should have just signed the papers and left to stay with my friend. I decided to argue with him because I didn't want to give up on our marriage, and he shouldn't have wanted to either. I mean, if he truly loved me, wouldn't he have cared to know how and why I'd had an affair in the first place? I brought up his affair with his ex and how it was so obvious they had slept together. That seemed to have made my husband so livid, and he threw me out of his house that night and ordered me to sign the divorce papers before it was too late. Once again, I didn't heed his words. I went to stay with my friend and didn't sign the papers. I couldn't show my face at work because I knew my ex-lover's wife would be out for my blood. My husband worked fast. The next 2 weeks, I got a visit from the police. I was under arrest for stealing a Bottega bag from my ex-lover's wife. She had found my husband, and they had gotten me arrested. I argued with the police that my affair had bought me the bag, but it was pointless. My affair hadn't truly bought me the bag. He had taken it from his wife's collection and gave it to me. And the bag wasn't the only thing he had given to me that was his wife's, her shoes, her clothes, her accessories. I begged and pleaded with my husband to get me out of police custody, but it wasn't happening in the foreseeable future. I had to pay for police bail with my savings, and she, my ex-lover's wife, said the only way she wouldn't take me to court was if I signed the divorce papers my husband had handed me. See, they had ganged up against me to bring about my downfall. I signed the papers because I didn't have the money to play with a rich woman in court over things her husband had handed to me. That's how I had lost my husband because of greed and misunderstanding. It turned out my husband had never slept with his ex. I was the bad person who deserved all that happened to her. I couldn't show my face to our friends again because they would turn me into a laughingstock and a bad example, so I had left for another city. I still miss my husband sometimes, though,